Hello everyone, it's Davey Mooney coming to you from the University of North Texas where I run the jazz guitar program. Benedetto artist, Sunnyside Records artist, got my Sunnyside catalog up here, so to speak. Live at National Sawdust, Benign Strangers, Hope of Home, Perrier Street. Got my improv book from Mel Bay, Personalizing Jazz Vocabulary. Another book is in the works. It's going to be called Into the Labyrinth, An Anatomy of Position Playing for Jazz Guitar. So today I'd like to talk about the tune Motion, Jimmy Raney song, and do something a little different. Talk about how I go about playing a melody that's intricate on the guitar. You'd think this one would be more sort of guitaristic than it is because it's kind of tricky, but written by a guitar player. And some tunes I remember figuring out the Wes Montgomery tune SOS from Full House and thinking like, oh my God, this is gonna be really hard. It's so fast. And it is hard, but you discover that it's kind of lays really well on the guitar, and it's not as hard as you thought. And I think with some instruments, I think that's the case. And a lot of the time on the guitar, we're learning the vocabulary of other instruments. We're trying to sound like a saxophone, we're trying to sound like a piano, and we do our best, but there's technical challenges and all kinds of issues that come up. So Jimmy Raney, I think he's one of the more underrated guitarists in the jazz guitar lineage. And people know who he is, but I feel like a lot of his music is, even now in the age of streaming and everything, is inaccessible. And there's periods of his work that, are sort of lost to us. Unless people have LPs out there, stuff that didn't even get reissued on CD that I know of. I really love the stuff he did in the 50s. I mean, this tune Motion was first done in, I think, 1953 with Stan Getz. It's cool to hear Stan Getz playing on it too. He still sounds like himself. Everything, the beautiful tone and every note is in like the perfect place rhythmically, but it's cool to hear him playing like bop. And this is a very modern song. It's based on the chords of You Stepped Out of a Dream, but in the key of D instead of the key of C. But Jimmy Raney, again for a second, he's got so many great records. I have this record called A that he did, I guess, in the 50s as well, with all these cool tunes. Some are, I think, contrafacts, really intricate harmony and single note playing. I have a record of him with Red Norvo that has one of the shreddinest, if I could say that, with Red Norvo and Red Mitchell, I guess post Mingus and Tal Farlow. They play just one of those things and it's just burning, no drums. And I happened to find the LP somewhere, but I don't know that this music is on CD. It's not on YouTube even, or the internet. And I remember uncovering on YouTube a tune from called Homage to Bartok that Jimmy Raney arranged for a string quartet and him, and then a rhythm section comes in and they play. But I don't know how to find that. Anyway, if anyone has that stuff, let me know. Hit me up. I want to listen to this music. But anyway, this tune is interesting too, this tune Motion, because later on he recorded it again with his son Doug, who's also a really underrated jazz guitarist, and they called it Action. And there's a Jamie Aebersold book, Play Duets with Jimmy Raney, where it's called Action. And I don't know, Motion, Action. I like the tune. And with many of these things too, the melody is a little different when he plays it with his son than when he plays it with Stan Getz. And there's a lot of lead sheets floating around out there. I've had some of my students do lead sheets of the Stan Getz version. And yeah, it's tricky to get everything, especially the little counter lines that he plays in 1953. It's a good quality recording, but it doesn't have the fidelity of our modern studio technology. But anyway, so like I said, the chords, you got You Stepped Out of a Dream in D. So D major 7, E flat major 7, then a 2-5 in B flat, A minor, D7, G. And now where the original You Stepped Out of a Dream would have gone to B minor, E7, and then F minor, B flat, E minor, A7. What Jimmy Raney does there is after the G major, he goes G minor, C7, so sort of another 2-5 to F minor, then F minor, B flat, E minor, A7. So that's really the only deviation. Then the second half, D major 7, E flat major 7, 2-5, but then instead of going to B flat, he goes to D minor 7, flat 5, G7, then E minor 7, flat 5, A7, and then 1, 4, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. So pretty much you stepped out of a dream. And then the melody, and it's another one of these things where I don't know any video that exists of him playing it, so you kind of have to guess at, listen for the timbre of the strings to guess where he played things. Some things are obvious because there's really only one place to play it. But, you know, we all have our own way of trying to execute these wacky bebop melodies on the guitar. And so what I'm going to do here is what I've come up with over the years. And even as I sit down and try to think through why I do things a certain way, it makes me want to change it sometimes, which is kind of funny. But anyway, so what I do, the melody is like this. That's the first part. I'll stop so I don't mess it up on the spot. But, so yeah, like that first part, I play right there in the middle of the neck because I think, okay, here's D major 7. It takes advantage of the sharp 11, and that's really like a lot of the sound of this tune. There's a lot of quartal, like things in perfect fourths, and a Lydian sound over the D major. And then you'd think the E flat that I would do it here, because you go up a half step and it makes sense, but what comes after that, so he goes, that, I have to do that right there, to me, to get the sound that he gets, and like the timbre, and you can tell there's a pull-off. If I do it there, I don't know, it's not going to sound right, so I either have to do it here, or here. So, I gotta make a shift, so. This makes the most sense to me. Especially since the next thing is this. Where else would you play that on the guitar? Could you go, yeah, maybe, I don't know, that's not gonna work for me. Here, I don't know, maybe some schools of guitar technique would want to do it there. But for me, with my, I guess, it's all relative, old school technique. So, and then he goes right into this. So it's a C minor chord, little, I don't know, melodic minor, I guess. And then this part is kind of funny too, because I guess I could stay here and go. I never play it down there, so I don't even know where the notes are, right? But I want to go up here because the next part, he starts to shift into this stuff in A minor. So at some point I got to get up here. So what I do is after I've done after that phrase is over, I shift up here. And as I was playing on this tune, you know, for this video and making a recording, I realized that, wow, I play this next part really strange. I go, and that's just sort of burned into my fingers and my memory, or whatever, my muscle memory. And I was thinking, why in the world do I play this C right here instead of right here? Why do I do this? I have no idea. That makes a lot more sense. Also, I think I used to go, you play these melodies long enough, and little errata or errors creep in there, right? And you just played it so long, and then you go back, and I was playing it along with the recording, slowed down, and I was like, I think I play instead of that one note difference. And I start to feel bad, like I'm a bad jazz musician, bad teacher, etc., for learning this funky note in there. I mean, could anyone really tell the difference if I didn't point it out? Versus, yeah, if you're listening really closely and you've been studying that tune, you could. But then, you go, he played it, I guess, 20 years later with his son, 25 years later, and the melody is significantly different. And, I think with a lot of bebop melodies, you hear them played by different people, and they're different, each time they record them slightly. Different musicians play them differently, and they, maybe they learn them from the record. But these things do evolve somewhat. I remember something that John Scofield did once that that blew my mind. One of the many times my mind was blown by John Schofield. I was in a class with him at NYU Guitar Ensemble, and he was demonstrating, he was playing confirmation, but he changed like little tiny things, like he had his own way of playing it that was slightly more guitaristic maybe, and it was still confirmation. And I remember thinking like, man, I don't have the cojones to change confirmation, but if John Schofield does it. Another example is I learned Relax into Camarillo from Joe Pass from Joy Spring live record, and that's pretty different than the Charlie Parker version, but Joe Pass plays it in unison with Jim Huard on bass, and it's like, hey, 1964. I don't know, was he wrong to not do it exactly like the Charlie Parker record? Anyway, so I feel kind of bad about playing that. Well, I feel weirder about the fact that I'm grabbing the C right here with my pinky instead of here. Anyway, but I may play this note, one of these notes, depending on how I'm feeling at the time. Then the next part, I like to grab that chord there. Now that chord's kind of grown on me, the idea of like having this interval in a chord. That's another kind of Schofield Frizellism, having that dissonance in there. It's a cool little line. Then he goes up, so we're on a G major. And on the record, he's got Jimmy Raney is playing. Again, Stan Getz playing that top part, but there's no way to really grab that. I feel like if I tried to get every little thing that Jimmy Raney does as a counter line and play the top part, it would just be a mess. So I try to grab a couple things, but I try to go the little double stop that they do there on the record. And I used to go, but somehow, again, because of what comes after it, I've moved to doing it right here. Hey, surprise costume change. Actually, I'm making this edit in the video because, as I said earlier, when you play these melodies for a long time, little mistakes can get burned into your muscle memory. And I realized watching back the video that the next part of the melody after this, I had a funky note in there that I've just been playing, and this is about a week later from the rest of this video that I filmed. And in that time, I've been sort of crowdsourcing amongst my students different ways to play this melody and having them all learn it because it's so great, Jimmy Raney. And as I see the different ways that they play the different parts of the melody, I realized that on this next part of the melody, which goes with another little double stop, that I was playing that. So instead of going with an A flat triad and then like a C sharp diminished triad, or maybe like the top part of an A7, I was playing, instead of G here, I was playing A into this double stop. And gosh, I don't remember when that crept into my playing, but it was in my left hand, so I wanted to go back and fix that. So here I am. So the next part of the melody. And I play it right here. I had a student the other day, man, I've seen a lot of different ways. People to play really every little part of the melody. Somebody was doing this part here, which seems cool to me, or depending on where you play, what comes before. But for me, since I've just gone, that seems to make the most sense. And I also, just one more thing before we return to our previously scheduled programming, over the last week I also thought about why it was that I play this note with my pinky. And really it's the fact that at tempo, when I get to this part and I do a pull-off, I like doing that pull-off with these two fingers, with first and third, rather than second and fourth. And you say, I mean, it seems a little silly, like what is the big difference? But then again, what's the big difference between playing C with your pinky here and C with your first finger? And I just found like at tempo and in the heat of battle, that kind of worked better for me. So I solved that issue. Anyway, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Anyway, then it repeats. the same thing. This time it comes in quicker. So that's different. That's kind of cool, because at that point, on the G7, he plays like this upper structure of a flat 9, flat 5. Pretty cool. And then for the E minor 7, flat 5 to A7, again on the A7, he plays an F sharp triad, which is kind of cool, diminished sound, right? And there, you know, again, I'm moving. Why not play all that in one area of the neck? I sort of remember. Why not? I'd have to go through it again in my mind. Well, this, you know, I would either have to do it here or here, so I'm kind of moving this way anyway. And then this. Somehow I found that the very last part of the melody I was able to do better on these strings. And so I think I consciously was trying to move in that direction. That would make sense too, right? So if I was going, I don't know. A lot of this too is, you know, I'll try one thing, and then after playing it on gigs, at tempos, and you know, sometimes it's a little too fast for you, and you realize that for your own personal technique, certain things just you can pull off with a higher like batting average. You know, you'll get it more times if you do one little change, either in your right hand or your left. And so I end up with this like Frankenstein monster sewed together positional things, and then some things I'm like, why did I do that? It seemed like a good idea at the time. God, who knows? But anyway, that's the melody. And the solo is cool because that's sort of the ending, but on the solo break, he keeps going. He goes. Something like that. And there's a break, and you're like, whoa, how does the melody end? It's very kind of Lenny Tristano-esque thing where you don't know when the melody ends and the solo begins. And just to comment on his playing a little bit, you know, I love Jimmy Raney's playing so much. There's something about it that's very unsentimental that I appreciate. You know, even though I'm a huge Wes Montgomery fan, early 60s Joe Pass, where you get this sort of romanticism almost, right? Like they played it sweet, played beautiful things on ballads, and it's like they're not above being like, you know, little slides and little vocal things in their playing. And I feel like Jimmy Raney doesn't do that. He just gives it to you. It's very sort of intellectual in a really cool way. And he's compared a lot to Tal Farlow. And I think they were sort of applying the same types of vocabulary from Bud Powell and Charlie Parker and people like that onto their instruments. But Jimmy Raney's articulation is very different than Tal Farlow's. You know, Tal Farlow did some amazing, like the intervallic leaps that he would do, I guess partially because his hands were so big and he had the short scale neck. Jimmy Raney is more, I don't know, like concise maybe? I don't know if that's the right term. And yeah, like I said, he just lays it down without any kind of sentimentality, and his breaks are funny like that. His breaks are like, he doesn't ever do a solo break with some kind of flashy thing because it's the solo break. He's just like, it's a break, here's where I start my solo. But on the motion solo, I'll just point out one thing on that Stan Getz record. Going into the second chorus, there's a thing that he plays that's so wild, where he goes. So it's like right when he's going to the like, it would be the place where you would kind of traditionally have like a turnaround. You're like 1, 6, 2, 5, top again, and he plays this series of like triads where he goes. It's like 1. okay, like an E triad over D. But then, in place of where there would be sort of the 2/5 to get back to the top, he goes. So he plays a, I guess it's kind of, F sharp over A, but somehow, so maybe it's not as strange, but it's just crazy. Like it's like an E triad, F sharp triad, and it resolves to the 6. It just sounds so modern to me. It sounds like triad pairs back in 1953. But of course, harmony, jazz harmony has been sophisticated and wild for, I think, a lot longer than the rhythmic stuff. The rhythmic innovations have come later than the harmony. I mean, you can listen to Ben Webster and people like that, and hear Duke Ellington and Strayhorn, obviously, and hear some really wild harmony as modern as anything we hear today. It's just, things have changed rhythmically in the music. But anyway, I'm going to play the melody of motion some kind of way. I think I got a good take of it, and take some choruses on it, and I hope you enjoy it. And go listen to Jimmy Raney, because he's the bomb.